Good morning. How are you doing this morning? Good? Yeah? You can hear that after 3 days of conferences, voices start being a bit more, how do you call it, robotic or something like that? So, well, I hope you enjoyed the evening yesterday. And, well, thanks for being here. It's always a bit more difficult on the last day, I know that. This morning, no base jump or no things like that, but we will be back to something more technical to some extent, but also very important for all of us. So we have 2 keynotes about AI, and yeah, I guess. And then we will talk about regulations, how the regulations will impact all of us as open source developers. So let's get started with, let me introduce the first keynote speaker. So we have the great honor to welcome Stefano Maffuli. So Stefano has been involved in open source, building open source ecosystems forever. He was instrumental in building OpenStack, and since 2021, he's the executive director of the Open Source Initiative and driving a very important endeavor at the Open Source Initiative, which is building an open source AI definition. So, Stefano, please.
Thank you, thanks everyone. So it's such a pleasure to be here. So you may be wondering why the Open Source Initiative, which is an organization that traditionally has been taking care of software and licenses, like legal documents that go with software, why all of a sudden, for so many years, we've been talking so much about artificial intelligence. And the real reason for this work is that we noticed episodes that kept happening. Right? This one was a story published on the New York Times, where a father took a picture of his child naked to send it to the doctor, and a system that he used for sending this picture automatically recognized child nudity and made a decision. This person is a pedophile, and hell broke loose for this poor chap. He had to really work hard to get his records cleaned up. The problem is, from the Open Source Initiative's perspective, this would have been a better title. It's a bug. Clearly, there is a bug in the system. The system that automatically made this decision to tag this father as a pedophile has problems. And what do we do traditionally with software? Right? If it's a bug, in the past, we have fixed it. Like we knew since the early days of the open source movement, the free software movement, however you want to call it, we had catchy slogans. Things like, given enough eyeballs or bugs are shallow. And we had this simple answer. To anyone who had bugs in their systems, we would say, give us the source code and give us the form in which a programmer can make modifications to programs, to software. Now, for something like the automatic machine that tags pedophiles online wrongly, we don't have a clear understanding of how that system works. We'd realize that the OSI that not only us, but many in our communities did not understand how to fix a buggy artificial intelligence system. And we didn't know what was the preferred form that a programmer or an AI builder of an AI system would be required to use in order to fix machines. So we humbly had to take a very long step back. And the step back was to understand, really engaging with different communities, understanding what they thought was necessary. So we had this challenge that the open source definition and the free software definition before that were created by people, but individuals mostly, working coming up with statements, coming up with documents that smaller communities at the time grew and assembled around those principles. Today, in these stages, in these days, AI was already being deployed to millions of users, is already being deployed to millions of users. Regulators are watching, so we didn't have the luxury of saying, here's what open source AI means. We needed to have a larger discussion with more people, and not only the known open source free software enthusiasts, but also we needed to engage with content creators, so like Creative Commons, the Open Knowledge Foundation. We needed to reach out to the academia and understand what they were thinking about open source and in the domain of AI and machine learning. We needed to talk to philosophers, ethicists. We needed to reach out to unions and defenders of online rights and in-person rights. So we drove this very large conversation, global, to understand what open source AI really means. And so I'll take you through quickly what we have discovered. The very first finding was that we needed to ground our conversations. We needed to understand exactly what open source, first of all, what open source AI means, and not something else. In other words, we are forced to define open source, use the term open source because it's already being used. It's already being included. It was included in the drafts of the European Union AI Act. But also there is a company calls itself Open, which doesn't have much to do with our concepts of open. So we needed to use this term. The other thing that we realized is that all of our founding documents, the GNU Manifesto and others, they have references to the program or the software. And those terms are clearly understood. They don't require special definitions, but in case of AI, we needed to anchor our conversations around what is it that we're trying to define, and we use the AI system definition from the OECD. The other decision that we had to make was which areas are we going to be focusing on? AI as a discipline is extremely wide and large. We noticed that there are conversations around hardware requirements, knowledge, and data that are new, that are not really part of the background of the open source initiative. But we decided that hardware and knowledge were out of scope because those are just basically a function of money and time. But data is a lot more complicated and requires a much deeper conversation. And that's what we focused on. Now, the other thing that we had to do was to really accelerate our decision-making process. We couldn't really wait. Everyone is pushing us to come up with a definition to add clarity to the environment and to the markets and to the legislation space. So the fastest way to accelerate is to follow the paths of the founders, if you want. And so we went through and reread all of our founding documents to see if we could reuse any of that. And in fact, we found out that it's actually quite easy to ground and to help driving the conversation forward by reapplying the golden rule that is written in the GNU Manifesto into AI that says that if I like an AI system, I must be able to share it with other people who like it. And that led to a very quick definition of what is an open source AI. And that is, you will recognize it, what is free software, but with a slightly twisted wording next to the verbs that we all love and have been, we commonly recognize, which is a system that you can use, share, modify, and study without having to ask for permission, basically. Now, those of you familiar with the free software definition will notice that next to the words study and modify, the free software definition says a precondition for this is having access to the source code. And we go back to the very difficult question that we needed to tackle next. What is the form, that preferred form, that an AI builder, someone with expertise to build AI systems, will need in order to make modifications and to study it? And that's what took us the largest chunk of the past year or more. And we had to design a process to find out what that preferred form of making modifications to an AI system is. And we used a technique called co-design. Co-design is a technique that allows you to put multiple stakeholders with different interest groups into one room and come up with a common shared solution to a problem. We've done this globally, thanks to a grant from the Alfred Sloan Foundation. We were able to cover a huge amount of travel with in-person presentations, in-person discussions around the world. We covered 5 continents. We had contributors and volunteers coming from 35 countries. It's been a very large, diverse group, including people from the Global South. It was really something that we cared about. Again, following that idea that we couldn't do this alone. We couldn't provide a definition that was only the work of a sole organization or one person. And the co-design process was organized into phases with, after the first definition agreements on what is an open source AI, we asked volunteers online and in person to analyze and rank, to answer to basically a question. Given that you want to have the freedoms to use, study, modify, and share a system, please tell us which components are absolutely required in order to exercise each of the freedoms, each of these verbs, and rank them. We assembled the groups, working groups results into a document that listed what were the required and what were optional components, and we asked a larger group to go out into the wild and analyze a larger set of AI systems to confirm that actually they could, they could use, study, modify, and share systems that were actually in the wild, existing and being used and produced, and analyze, use the principles that we have in the early drafts of the definition. With that validation process completed, we've released a release candidate, a complete text of the open source AI definition. And we iterated through it, cleaning up the text, clarifying questions that were raised during the review process. And we're getting ready to announce version 1 at the end of this week, the beginning of next week, actually. And this is what it looks like. It's made of 2 pieces. On the top part, there are basics. There is a preamble, sort of a manifesto. In the bottom part, and then there is the verbs, you know, those 4 freedoms in what is an open source AI. And then in the second half, there is the definition of what is the preferred form of making modifications. And that's what it says. It says that an open source AI is an AI that gives you the freedom to use, study, modify, and share, which translate into having access to 3 types of components: the weights, parameters, the code used for training, and the code used for running the system, the inference engine, and the code used for building the data set. And then on the data front, the requirements are the complete list of the data used for the training and the data sets that you use for the training itself, if you have the right to do that. So what is next step and what is now your task is to review and review the text, review the FAQ, and follow in an accelerated path what we have done in the past couple of years, which is humbly take a step back. A lot of the assumptions, I guarantee you that if you're familiar with open source software and you haven't built machine learning systems, you may have to take a step back, the same way that we have done it. Take a step back, forget what you've known, read the FAQ with an open mind, and accept the fact that data, software, machine learning systems, building, compilation, all of these words have a completely different meaning between the two fields, pure software and machine learning space. And that's what I encourage you to do. We have a thank you for all of our volunteers. There is actually more than I'm sure this slide needs an update. And a call for you is to become a member of OSI. We are a volunteer, we are a charity organization based in the United States. And we have members all over the world, and we need more members also in Europe because we have activities and a global reach. So with that, thank you very much. And I'm going to be around the next for the rest of the day. So if you have questions for me, for anything, any curiosity that I can satisfy, I'm open and available. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefano. Just, I think your call to endorse the open source AI definition is very important because, well, none of us, I think, was there when the open source definition was defined, or we were not in the room.
No.
And here we can be in the room because this is going public on Monday. And this is now that you, as an individual or your organization, can endorse it and make sure that what you like in what is written in the open source AI definition gets more adoption, and that's super important. So, yes.
It's true.
Joining open source initiative is important, but now I think that endorsing the open source AI definition is even more important.
It's true.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you.